Welcome aboard. The door is open. Come on in. All you need is to have the honesty, open-mindedness, and the willingness to try. If you're welcome nowhere else, you're welcome here. As our friend Rumi says, why stay in your jail cell when the door is open? Welcome to Fishing Without Bait, a lifetime without definitive expectations, and full impact mindfulness where we help people help themselves to live a life out loud, to fully impact their life rather than trudge through life to flow through it and explode through every moment. I'm Jim Ellermeyer. I'm a behavioral health therapist, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend and co-host, Mr. Mike, behind the mic, and today I have a very special guest, a friend of mine, an old friend of mine, and when we got together, it was kind of a combination of serendipity and synchronicity, I would say, my friend James Buckley.
How you doing? Glad to be here.
So we'll get into our relationship perhaps a bit later in another upcoming podcast. However, what I want to discuss tonight is, as this program, James, is we advance social justice. We're interested in that. We're interested in not what we can get, is what we can do. Okay, we feel on this program that we were given much. Okay, and that gratitude must go forward. We feel that gratitude's an action word, and in doing so, I know that you're of the same ilk. You're on that same boat. You're paddling that same canoe. And in that vein, every year you organize a special event. Could you tell us about that?
Yes, each year we started last year with an event that raises awareness and helps fund some of the local women's shelters against domestic violence. And we try to just bring out a lot of musicians to come and play, so we get a good attendance. We have a lot of contributors, and the beneficiaries are two of the local shelters receive much needed funds to help support the women that do end up going there. And it's amazing how far they can stretch a dollar.
Tell us the origin of this idea. Tell us how it hatched.
Well, when I was last year around March, I wanted to do something for women, some kind of benefit for women. And I met with a couple friends of mine, and one was the guy that hosts this thing. And one of us mentioned domestic violence. And the bell went off in my head, and I said, that's it. That has to be it. Because it was so, it doesn't discriminate. It's the perfect one to do, and it's very serious. It's very prominent. It's going on every 9 seconds. A woman is beaten, and if you think about that, it was just a perfect benefit to have for women, and I'm so glad that I chose that one, because I really learned a lot about what's going on with domestic violence firsthand.
What we try to do on this show, James, is we try to help empower people. We try to help people find their own voice, get used actually to the sound of their own voice. Do you remember the first time you heard your recorded voice played back to you?
Oh, probably, yeah. It doesn't sound. I didn't think it was me. That was someone else, but
Well, unfortunately, girls begin to lose their self-concept and self-esteem around the age of 9. I didn't make that up. Okay, so women are placed in another category, and this what you're talking about, this domestic violence, used to be just that dirty little family secret.
Right.
No one would tell. No one wanted to tell.
Exactly. Yes, that was the way it was, and it was kept quiet. It was kept secret. No one got, reprimanded for it as much, and there was a lot of unnecessary suffering that went on. Women, the fear was so high, they were just afraid, and a lot of them just accepted it as part of life.
That's a telling statement. They accepted it. So quite often what people stay with is not situations that are comfortable, James. They stay with situations that are familiar.
Exactly, and that's still prevalent today in the women that are in that situation. depending on what level they are. They're afraid that they won't be able to find a job. They're afraid they're going to get hurt. Of course, they're afraid for their children, their pets. They, you know, we they have for someone who's a predator, they knowingly try to control another person. So if that's what's going on, then a woman can be the perfect target for them because physically most of them are weaker than the man. Plus, they're the breadwinner, uh, so they gradually try to take control, and this can happen over a period of time.
So this violence is an issue of control.
It is control. It's a control issue, control over another human being, and that strikes my heart really hard because not only was it perfect for me to do benefit for this, but I also advocate against child abuse, elderly, any kind of animals, any kind of situation where whoever is being attacked is defenseless or helpless, can't fend for themselves. That's the strongest part of my
And
heart.
they feel they don't have a voice, or they just don't know what to do. They don't know
Exactly.
where to access help. And most people sit back and say, "Isn't that a shame? Somebody should really do something about that."
Right, and they say that. So what we do, which is really nice, so we can talk about a benefit to raise money to help, and that certainly helps. We have all kinds of different things going on, but one of the biggest thing is the awareness. So we want people to leave there knowing what the warning signs are, because almost every one of us comes across it. We see the warning signs, and sometimes the warning sign can start out with just verbal abuse, emotional abuse, but we know that can lead to physical abuse. So that's how it starts out.
When you feel alone and you feel that you don't have any support, you feel so alone and you're consumed with fear. We often talk, James, about fear being the corroding thread throughout people's lives, a foundational emotion.
Exactly, it is. Fear is built in, and we all have some sort of fear, and it's an emotion that we have to experience. The the thing that we need to know is, how do we handle that fear? What do we do with it?
So the idea is this is a feel-good event. Okay, a feel-good event. However, how does this go forward, James?
Okay, so we do this and we try to create the awareness, but it's a continuous all year round uh, activity that's going on because we're in touch with the centers, uh, and we keep in touch with them, and we certainly are try to be there to tell people how to give someone advice. We certainly don't want someone, if it's a neighbor or a friend, to go in and actually physically intervene, as much as we'd rather have them call one of the hotlines and tell them what's going on so they can advise them, because there's always that danger of some physical harm, and you can actually create that if you stir up.
So often we live in a world where don't get involved. Don't
Yes.
get involved. Look the other way. Hold your head down. Pretend you don't see.
And that's the way things were before this domestic violence came to the forefront, that it was happening. You're talking about the traditional home structure where the husband worked, the wife stayed at home, took care of the house, raised the kids, and all of that. So there was such a wall between the two. You didn't cross over one or
Yes.
the other. So
Everyone had their roles.
yeah, exactly. So with that being uh, existing, then it was almost a natural thing for the man to be in charge, and that includes our tendency and our natural instincts, which are to be a protector, to
Yes.
be someone who takes care of. So, but what happens with domestic violence? It goes into controlling everyone, not really protecting as much as wanting to have control.
So generally, people who feel low self-concept, low
Hmm.
self-esteem, and feel that they have no control over their own life, the only belief that they have to control something is a weaker person.
Yes, and so that builds up over time. It may start out gradually, but while it's building up as uh, you know, violating someone else, it's also building more strength within that predator, that person who's committing this domestic violence. They get stronger the more control they get, to the point where they look the other way, like you said, put their head down, go in the corner, cower.
So Martin Luther King said, evil will conquer when good people do nothing.
Yes, and that is so true. And that's why I call out to all the people I can, and every way I can, through the media and through attendance at this, to try to do the good thing.
So when we talk about fear, and fear is an emotion, and our emotions are neither good nor bad. It's how we react to them. It's a reaction that follows the emotion. So, James, no one is fearless. Okay. If you want to see fearless people, go to the movies. If you want to see the tough guys, go to the movies. Okay. Because that's where they are. So all courage is the ability to deal with fear. And sometimes we need to support people for them to have that courage.
And the thing about fear is that as we know in our DBT training, is that it has to be fact-based. So you want to look for the facts. So if there's a fear that you have, check the facts first. Say, are you overdoing your fear? Is it unwarranted? Is it not factually based? And so that's why domestic violence, there are some out there who get verbally abused, emotionally abused, but say things like, "Oh, that's okay. He does this all the time," or they just blow it off and think that everything will be all right.
They justify it, and unfortunately, a lot of people who are being abused in that situation, they get into the mindset when they're told a lie loud enough and long enough, they begin to believe it. So they actually begin to believe that they deserve what they're getting.
Yep. It's a tactic that's used in a lot of ways by a lot of people who are trying to break into someone's head and try to take it over.
Or people say, "That's my business. Stay out of my business. You don't belong in my business. You don't tell me what to do." And say, "Don't get involved in their business. Don't." Well, when another human being is hurt, it's everyone's business.
Yeah, and then so someone may be getting verbally abused, emotionally abused. Sooner or later, the woman may reach their limit, and may say something back or do something, and that upsets the predator, and he wants to react. So sometimes it gets to that physical point when she does not obey the commands, and this is just so much control over a human life. And it's just, when I hear these stories, and
they're heartbreaking. They're tragic.
Yeah, and I've met so many women who have come forward to me and told me their stories, their backstories, and I SMH, shake my head. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Unfortunately, what also poisons the pond in these situations is substance use.
Yeah, that gets in there, and alcohol for sure. Especially if it's a violent situation, alcohol seems to bring out the braveness and courageousness of a person, so they actually lose.
Alcohol releases the inhibitions.
Exactly.
You may do something that you normally maybe would like to do,
Right.
but you normally would not do. So the Bible's Jesus talks 184 times. He references 184 times in the New Testament about the responsibility to help the poor, the marginalized, the oppressed, the sick, the falsely imprisoned, the marginalized. Do you think he meant it?
Well, I absolutely. It's a sad kind of thing that you see, but not to the point where you say, "I can't deal with this. I'm not going to try to help." For me, it just energized me, and those kinds of things are the things.
I see that's in your heart. I hear that
Yeah.
in your voice. This is a matter that's very important to you and close to your heart.
Yes. I just see any kind of injustice done to someone who's defenseless and helpless, and it could be the simplest things. But anytime I see that, I just, it just gets me worked up. So I want to try to do something, but I can't do everything. So I do what I can when I can, and try to analyze it and say, what's the smart thing to do?
No one can do everything, but everyone can do something.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's the basis of our event. Our benefit is to increase that awareness so people know what those signs are.
Please check out our website at fishingwithoutbait.com, where you can listen to the show, comment on our discussions, and find out where you can subscribe to our podcast. If you're interested in flying the colors of Fishing Without Bait, click the shop icon on our website. We have clothing, mugs, cell phone cases, and so much more. Show the world that you fish without bait. This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com.